The Path to Wholeness, Carl Jung and the Journey of Individuation. Chapter 1, The Architect of the Soul, Who was Carl Jung? Any profound journey benefits from a mapmaker, and for the journey of individuation, Carl Gustav Jung is undeniably our insightful cartographer. To understand what individuation is, it helps to first explore who Jung was, for his life's experiences and intellectual struggles were not merely incidental to his theories. They were the very crucible in which his groundbreaking psychological concepts were forged. Born in 1875 in a small Swiss village, Keswil, Jung's childhood was far from ordinary. His father was a somewhat conventional pastor, but his mother hailed from a family steeped in spiritualism and folklore. Young Carl grew up navigating a complex inner world, often feeling at home with two personalities. A pragmatic, empirical personality number one, attuned to the external world of science and academia, and a deeply intuitive, spiritual personality number two, connected to ancient dreams, nature, and the unseen. This innate duality, this early awareness of a conscious self and a deep, often mysterious, inner realm, would become a cornerstone of his later psychological models. Jung was a solitary child, finding solace in nature and his own imagination. As a young boy, he carved a small, mysterious figure from wood, which he hid in his attic. He would converse with it, treating it almost as a living entity, sharing his secrets and finding comfort in its silent presence. This early fascination with symbols and inner figures foreshadowed his lifelong exploration of the unconscious. He pursued a demanding academic path, studying medicine at the University of Basel and later specializing in psychiatry. It was at the Burggrelsli Psychiatric Hospital in Zurich, under the innovative direction of Eugen Bleuler, that Jung began to establish his reputation. His early research used word association experiments, pioneering empirical methods to observe the emotional responses that revealed hidden, complexes, emotionally charged groups of ideas or images in the unconscious, a concept we will explore further. Jung's early work brought him to the attention of Sigmund Freud, the towering figure of psychoanalysis in Vienna. Freud, who was nearly 2 decades Jung's senior, saw in Jung a brilliant and promising successor, a crown prince who could carry the torch of psychoanalysis beyond its Viennese origins. Their initial meeting in 1907 turned into a legendary 13-hour conversation, a testament to their immediate intellectual kinship. For several years, they engaged in an intense correspondence, sharing ideas and dreams, seemingly united in their revolutionary understanding of the human psyche. However, their intellectual paths, though parallel for a time, were destined to diverge. While Freud emphasized the personal unconscious, viewing psychological issues primarily as stemming from repressed childhood traumas, particularly those related to sexuality, Jung felt this view was too narrow. He observed patterns in his patients' dreams and delusions that resonated with ancient myths, religious symbols, and cultural narratives from across the globe. He began to postulate the existence of a deeper, common layer of the unconscious beyond personal experience, the collective unconscious, populated by universal patterns and images he termed archetypes. This fundamental disagreement, among others, such as Jung's broader understanding of libido as general psychic energy, not just sexual drive, led to an inevitable and painful break between the two intellectual giants around 1912 to 1913. For Freud, it was a betrayal. For Jung, it was an intellectual necessity, a turning point that plunged him into the most challenging, yet ultimately most fruitful, period of his life. Following the rupture, Jung entered what he famously called his confrontation with the unconscious, a period of intense inner turmoil, self-experimentation, and profound personal revelation lasting roughly from 1913 to 1918. He was not experiencing a psychotic breakdown. He remained a functioning physician and family man. Instead, he deliberately plunged himself into his own unconscious, engaging in what he would later term active imagination, a process of consciously engaging with unconscious material. He recorded his visions, dreams, and lengthy dialogues with inner figures, such as Philemon, a wise old man who became a spiritual guide, and Salome, a blind maiden who embodied emotional insight, in magnificent illuminated manuscripts later published as the Red Book or Liber Novus. This deeply personal, often terrifying, descent into the depths of his own psyche was, in essence, Jung's own journey of individuation. It was from this raw, lived experience that many of his most central concepts were born. The archetypes, the collective unconscious, the shadow, the anima and animus, and crucially, the concept of the self as the ultimate unifying center of the psyche. It was also from this period that he crystallized the very idea that humans are driven not just by past events, as Freud argued, but also by a future-oriented striving for psychological wholeness, the drive to individuate. Jung's work, known as analytical psychology, offers us a perspective that encompasses not just pathology but potential. He saw the human psyche as inherently purposeful, constantly striving towards a state of integration and meaning. He expanded the scope of psychology to include spirituality, mythology, art, and the universal patterns that shape human existence. By exploring his life, we gain insight into the profound personal basis for his teachings, understanding that the theories he presented were not abstract intellectual constructs, but hard-won insights from his own courageous journey into the heart of the soul. In the next chapter, we will begin to map the structure of this soul, exploring Jung's fundamental models of the human psyche. Chapter 2. Mapping the inner world consciousness and the unconscious. Imagine taking a deep plunge into the vast ocean, far beyond the familiar surface. What you find there, the hidden currents, the strange creatures, the ancient, timeless depths, might be unsettling, yet utterly fascinating. Carl Jung believed the human psyche is precisely such an ocean, with visible surface waters and profound, largely unexplored depths. Before we embark on the journey of individuation, it is essential to understand Jung's map of this inner world, for it is through navigating these psychic landscapes that true wholeness becomes possible. Jung proposed a model of the psyche that consists of several interacting layers, each contributing to who we are, how we perceive the world, and how we might evolve. These layers are not distinct, separate boxes, but rather fluid, permeable regions that are constantly influencing one another. At the very top, the part of the psyche we are most familiar with is the ego. In Jungian psychology, the ego is the center of our conscious awareness. It's our sense of I, the seat of our identity, our willpower, and our rationality. It's what allows us to navigate the external world, make decisions, form intentions, and maintain a consistent sense of who we are from one moment to the next. The ego is our conscious personality, the part of us that remembers, thinks, feels, and perceives. It acts as the gatekeeper between our inner world and the outer reality. However, Jung emphasized that the ego, while crucial, represents only a fraction of our total psychic reality. Below the surface of consciousness lies the vast and powerful realm of the unconscious, which Jung divided into two primary layers: the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. First, there is the personal unconscious. This layer is closer to the surface, and its contents are derived from our individual life experiences. It contains everything that was once conscious, but has been forgotten, repressed, or simply dropped out of our immediate awareness. Think of childhood memories that are no longer at the forefront of your mind, the fleeting thoughts you dismiss during the day, or perhaps painful experiences that your psyche has pushed away for protection. These contents are not truly lost. They can often be recalled with effort, or they might surface in dreams, slips of the tongue, or sudden flashes of insight. Within this personal unconscious reside what Jung termed complexes. You might have heard someone say, "Oh, they have a complex about that," usually referring to an oversensitivity or an irrational reaction. For Jung, a complex is a cluster of emotionally charged ideas, images, and memories that are unconsciously grouped around a particular theme or concept. For example, a power complex might manifest as an irrational need for control, a fear of being weak, or intense reactions to perceived challenges to one's authority. These complexes often have a powerful, autonomous quality, meaning they can function outside the direct control of the ego, sometimes even taking over our behavior or thinking in certain situations. Jung first identified these through his word association experiments, where patients' unusual responses or delayed reactions revealed areas of emotional conflict. Recognizing and integrating these complexes is often an early, necessary step in the journey towards individuation. as it helps us reclaim parts of ourselves that have been fragmented or pushed into the shadows. Deeper still, and perhaps Jung's most groundbreaking contribution to psychology, is the concept of the collective unconscious. This is not a personal archive of forgotten memories, but rather a deeper, transpersonal layer of the psyche that is shared by all humanity. It is inherited, not learned, much like our physical body inherits a structure that predisposes it to walk upright or speak a language. The collective unconscious contains universal patterns and predispositions to experience the world in certain ways. Jung saw it as a kind of psychic inheritance, a reservoir of ancestral experiences and images common to all people across all cultures and times. The contents of the collective unconscious are not specific memories or ideas, but rather archetypes. Archetypes are universal, primordial patterns or images that manifest in myths, legends, fairy tales, religious symbols, and dreams across diverse cultures. They are like blueprints or predispositions for certain ways of behaving and experiencing the world. For example, throughout history and across continents, we find myths about the hero's journey, the wise old man, the great mother, or the cunning trickster. These are manifestations of archetypes. They are not fixed images, but rather dynamic, underlying structural elements that shape our perceptions, emotions, and behaviors without our conscious awareness. We will delve deeply into these fascinating archetypes in the next chapter. The interaction between these layers is constant and dynamic. The ego constantly processes information from the outside world, creating new experiences that feed the personal unconscious. At the same time, it receives signals, urges, and sometimes powerful insights from the depths of both the personal and collective unconscious. Dreams, for instance, are often seen as bridges between the conscious and unconscious worlds, offering symbolic messages from these deeper layers. Neuroses or psychological imbalances, from a Jungian perspective, are often signals from the unconscious, indicating that the ego has become too rigid, too one-sided, or is failing to acknowledge important aspects of our deeper selves. The journey of individuation, then, is essentially a conscious collaboration between the ego and the vast resources of the unconscious. It is about expanding the territory of consciousness, bringing more and more of the unconscious material into awareness, not to be overwhelmed by it, but to integrate it into a more comprehensive and whole personality. It's about understanding our personal history through the lens of complexes and connecting with the universal patterns that unite us all, ultimately leading to a more profound sense of meaning and purpose. This understanding of the psyche's architecture sets the stage for exploring the specific inhabitants of the collective unconscious, the powerful archetypes, which we will do in our next chapter. Chapter 3. The Archetypal Blueprint, Patterns of the Collective Unconscious. In the previous chapter, we began to map the incredible vastness of the human psyche, delving beyond the conscious ego into the personal and collective unconscious. We touched upon the idea that the collective unconscious is populated by universal patterns and predispositions called archetypes. Now, it's time to truly explore these powerful, dynamic forces that shape our experiences, our dreams, and indeed, the very fabric of human culture. Imagine not just the memories of your own life, but the echoes of every human life that has ever been lived, vibrating within you. This is, in a poetic sense, the collective unconscious. Archetypes are the organs of this collective psyche, the inherited forms or predispositions of the human mind to organize and interpret experiences in certain, universal ways. They are not fully formed images or specific figures, but rather potentials for images and ways of experiencing. Much like the human body is predisposed to form a heart, lungs, and a brain, rather than a tree or a rock. Think of it this way. Humanity, across millennia and continents, has faced universal challenges: birth, death, love, loss, courage, betrayal, the struggle for meaning. As a result of these shared human experiences, certain psychological patterns have become deeply etched into our species' psychic structure. Archetypes are these inherited patterns. They are primordial images, themes, or figures that manifest in countless variations across cultures, in myths, fairy tales, religions, shamanic practices, and dreams. For instance, almost every culture has stories of a great flood or a wise old man, a divine child, a harrowing journey, or a powerful mother figure. These recurring motifs are not evidence of direct cultural transmission from one society to another, but rather evidence of the underlying archetypal patterns present in the collective unconscious of humanity. When an archetype is activated in an individual, perhaps by a compelling life situation, a powerful dream, or a work of art, it can evoke profound emotional and spiritual responses, often carrying a sense of numinosity or sacredness. Jung was clear that archetypes themselves are not directly knowable. They are theoretical constructs, like the invisible forces of gravity. What we experience are their manifestations. These manifestations are the archetypal images, symbols, and behaviors that emerge in our personal and collective lives. They are energy centers, shaping our thoughts, feelings, and actions, often outside of our conscious awareness. When we fall in love, for example, we may be experiencing an activation of the Anima or Animus archetype, projecting those qualities onto another person. When we confront a difficult challenge with courage, we may be aligning with the hero archetype. Understanding archetypes is crucial to the process of individuation because it helps us recognize the universal patterns at play in our own lives, demystifying experiences that might otherwise seem chaotic or purely personal. It also helps us move beyond a purely personalistic view of psychological development to appreciate our deep connection to the larger human story. While Jung identified many archetypes, some are particularly central to the journey of individuation, serving as milestones or key players in the process of becoming whole. We will explore these in detail in subsequent chapters, but let's briefly introduce them here. The persona. This is the archetype of conformity. It's the mask we wear in public, the social role we adopt to meet the expectations of society and to protect our more vulnerable inner self. While necessary for social functioning, identification with the persona can detach us from our true nature. The shadow, often the first and most challenging archetype to confront. The shadow represents the repressed, hidden, and unacknowledged aspects of our personality. Everything we deem undesirable, shameful, or unacceptable, but also undeveloped positive qualities. It is the other side of our ego, and its integration is paramount for psychological growth. The Anima and Animus. These are the contrasexual archetypes. For men, the Anima represents the unconscious feminine principle within them, shaping their emotional life, intuition, and relationships with women. For women, the Animus represents the unconscious masculine principle, influencing their assertiveness, rationality, and relationships with men. These archetypes are crucial bridges to the deeper unconscious and are often key to understanding our attractions and projections in relationships. The self. This is the most profound and central archetype, the ultimate goal of the individuation process. The self is the archetype of wholeness, the unifying center of the entire psyche, conscious and unconscious. It represents our true potential, our innate blueprint for psychological totality, and it guides the individual towards their unique destiny. These archetypes are not static figures, but dynamic processes within the psyche, interacting with each other and with our conscious ego. The journey of individuation often involves a dance with these powerful forces. Acknowledging the persona, confronting and integrating the shadow, engaging with the Anima or Animus, and ultimately striving for a conscious relationship with the self. In the chapters that follow, we will embark on this journey, beginning with the masks we wear in public and the hidden forces they both reveal and conceal. Chapter 4. The persona and the mask confronting our public selves. We all have a public face. From the moment we step outside our homes or even interact with family members, we subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, adjust our demeanor, our language, our very character to fit the situation. We present ourselves differently to a boss than we do to a close friend or to a stranger in a social setting. This outward self, the one we present to the world, is what Carl Jung called the persona. The term persona comes from the Latin word for the mask worn by actors in ancient Greek and Roman theater. These masks weren't just disguises, they amplified certain characteristics and helped the audience identify the role the actor was playing. Similarly, Jung's persona is not a disguise in a deceptive sense, but rather a necessary and adaptive social mask. It is the compromise we make between our inner self and the demands of society. It's how we fit in and navigate the complexities of social interaction. Consider the role of a teacher in a classroom. They adopt a persona of authority, knowledge, and perhaps patience to effectively manage their students and impart information. A corporate executive might embody a persona of confidence, decisiveness, and strategic thinking within the boardroom. A parent might present a persona of unwavering strength and calm to their children, even when feeling overwhelmed. These personas are functional. They allow us to perform specific roles, gain acceptance, and avoid social friction. Without some form of persona, navigating the world would be chaotic and exhausting. We would constantly be exposing our raw, unfiltered selves to scrutiny, which is neither practical nor desirable in most social contexts. However, the persona, while necessary, carries a profound danger if we become too identified with it. The problem arises when we confuse the mask with our true face, when we genuinely believe that the role we play is who we are. When this happens, our personal identity can become rigidly intertwined with our social function. The successful executive, for example, might find himself utterly lost and without purpose if his career crumbles. The caregiver, whose entire identity revolves around helping others, might feel empty and resentful if their dependent no longer needs them. Over-identification with the persona leads to a loss of authenticity and psychological flexibility. We feel compelled to maintain a consistent image, even if it means stifling our true feelings, interests, or innate personality traits. This rigidity can manifest as chronic anxiety, a feeling of being trapped, or a deep sense of inner emptiness despite external success. The energy that fuels the authentic self gets channeled entirely into maintaining the public facade, leaving little for genuine self-development or spontaneous expression. In some cases, a severe mismatch between the persona and the true self can lead to neurotic symptoms, as the unacknowledged energy of the suppressed self attempts to break through. For Jung, the first step on the path of individuation is to recognize, acknowledge, and differentiate ourselves from our persona. This doesn't mean we should abandon our social roles or behave inappropriately. It means understanding that we are not our roles. We are more than our job title, our social status, our family position, or our online profile. It's about recognizing the persona as a tool, a functional outer layer, rather than the core of our being. How do we begin to differentiate from the persona? It starts with self-observation and honest reflection. Ask yourself, do I feel pressure to be a certain way around certain people, even if it feels unnatural? Do I worry excessively about what others think of me? Do I feel exhausted after social interactions, as if a performance has drained me? Are there aspects of myself that I constantly hide from public view, even from those close to me? Do I feel a deep sense of disquiet or emptiness when I'm alone, away from my usual roles? Beginning to recognize these patterns opens the door to greater psychological freedom. It allows us to consciously choose how and when to deploy our persona, rather than being driven by it. It enables us to step outside of our assigned roles and explore other facets of our personality, leading to a richer, more authentic life. This initial shedding of the skin, however, often brings us face to face with what lies beneath. The parts of ourselves we've suppressed, disowned, or simply not integrated. This often includes what Jung called the shadow, the subject of our next important exploration. Chapter 5, Befriending the Darkness, Integrating the Shadow. Having explored the persona, the social mask we present to the world, we now turn our gaze inward to a far more challenging, yet infinitely more rewarding, aspect of the psyche, the shadow. If the persona is what we want the world to see, the shadow is what we desperately don't want anyone, including ourselves, to see. It is, perhaps, the most misunderstood and feared of Jung's archetypes, yet its confrontation and integration are absolutely paramount for the journey of individuation. The shadow comprises all the aspects of our personality that the conscious ego has rejected and banished to the personal unconscious. These are the qualities, impulses, and desires that we deem unacceptable, morally reprehensible, socially undesirable, or simply too difficult to acknowledge. They might be aggressive tendencies, selfish desires, deeply buried fears, irrational prejudices, or embarrassing memories. Think of it as the psychological dustbin, where we throw everything that doesn't fit our preferred self-image or the societal norms we have internalized. It's crucial to understand that the shadow is not inherently evil. While it certainly contains our darker aspects, our anger, cruelty, jealousy, or greed, it also holds undeveloped positive qualities. Perhaps you repress a natural assertiveness because you were taught to always be nice, or a creative impulse because it wasn't considered practical. These unexpressed positive traits can also form part of the shadow, remaining latent until acknowledged. The shadow is essentially the other side of the personality, the counterpoint to the persona and the conscious ego. Why is confronting the shadow so vital? Because whatever we repress does not disappear. It simply operates outside of our conscious control, often finding indirect and harmful ways to manifest. One of the most common manifestations of the unintegrated shadow is projection. Instead of recognizing our own undesirable traits, we tend to see them in others. If you find yourself consistently irritated or repulsed by a particular flaw in another person, there's a strong chance you're witnessing a projection of your own unacknowledged shadow. The loud, obnoxious behavior of a colleague, for instance, might trigger intense anger in you not just because it's genuinely annoying, but because it mirrors a repressed desire for uninhibited self-expression you deny in yourself. Unacknowledged shadow material can also lead to self-sabotage, neurotic behaviors, sudden outbursts of irrational anger, or periods of depression. It's like a pressure cooker. The more we deny a part of ourselves, the more pressure builds, until it explodes in unexpected ways or subtly undermines our conscious intentions. A person who outwardly presents as exceptionally modest might inwardly harbor a grandiose complex, leading to passive-aggressive behaviors or an inability to accept legitimate praise. The integration of the shadow is not about becoming these darker aspects, nor is it about releasing them without restraint. It's about consciously acknowledging their existence within us. It's about owning them, understanding their origins, and learning to manage their energy in constructive ways. For instance, acknowledging one's aggression isn't about becoming violent, but perhaps about channeling that energy into healthy assertion, setting boundaries, or tackling challenges with vigor. This process is rarely easy. It demands courage and humility. It often involves pain, shame, and discomfort as we come face to face with aspects of ourselves we have fought hard to deny. Many people resist shadow work because they fear what they might find, or they equate acknowledgement with permission to indulge in harmful behaviors. However, the exact opposite is true. It is only by bringing the shadow into the light of consciousness that we can begin to control and transform its raw energy. How does one begin to engage with the shadow? Observe your projections. Pay close attention to what irritates you most about others. What behaviors or traits do you vehemently condemn? These can be signposts pointing directly to your own unacknowledged shadow material. Analyze your dreams. The unconscious often communicates through dreams. Shadow figures in dreams might appear as villains, monsters, or people who evoke fear or disgust in you. Rather than dismissing them, try to understand what aspect of yourself they might represent. Engage in active imagination. As Jung himself did during his confrontation with the unconscious, you can consciously engage with shadow figures that appear in dreams, fantasies, or feelings. This involves setting aside time to sit quietly, imagine the figure, and then engage in an inner dialogue with it, asking what it represents, what it wants, or what message it carries. Embrace paradox. Recognize that no human being is purely good or evil. We all contain both light and darkness. True wholeness involves embracing this paradox rather than trying to excise one side. Practice self-compassion. The shadow contains our deepest shames. Approach this work with compassion for yourself as if you were consoling an embarrassed child. Integrating the shadow does not mean becoming perfect. It means becoming whole. It means reclaiming lost energy, expanding self-awareness, and developing a more profound sense of authenticity. By befriending our darkness, we cease to be at its mercy. We become more rounded, less judgmental of ourselves and others, and significantly more grounded. With the shadow acknowledged, we open ourselves to the next profound encounter on the path of individuation, the dialogue with our inner opposite-sex component, the Anima or Animus. Chapter 6. The Inner Other Dialogue with Anima and Animus. As we venture deeper into Jung's map of the psyche, beyond the social mask of the persona and the hidden aspects of the shadow, we arrive at a fascinating and profoundly influential pair of archetypes, the anima and the animus. These are Jung's terms for the contrasexual soul image, meaning the unconscious feminine aspect in men and the unconscious masculine aspect in women, respectively. Before diving into their significance, it's important to set aside societal gender stereotypes and understand these archetypes as fundamental psychological energies and patterns present in everyone. Jung posited that every human being carries within their collective unconscious the image and experience of the opposite sex. This is not merely a social construct, but a deep-seated, primordial pattern arising from humanity's shared history of living in mixed-sex communities, interacting with and being raised by both men and women. The anima in a man represents his deepest emotional sensitivities, his capacity for relatedness, creativity, intuition, and vulnerability. The animus in a woman embodies her drive for assertion, rationality, strength of conviction, and ability to reflect and discriminate. Like the shadow, the anima and animus primarily reside in the unconscious, and their influence is often experienced through projection. This is most evident in attraction and relationships. A man might project his anima onto a woman he encounters, perceiving her as the embodiment of his ideal feminine qualities. Similarly, a woman might project her animus onto a man, seeing him as the perfect representation of her inner masculine ideals. While this initial projection can spark intense attraction and the feeling of finding one's other half, it can also lead to significant disillusionment if the initial idealized image clashes with the reality of the person. When the projection is withdrawn or falls, the relationship often suffers, but it also creates an opportunity for the individual to recognize and integrate those qualities within themselves. Let's explore each archetype in more detail. The anima in men. For a man, the anima is often the source of his emotional life, his moods, his capacity for empathy, and his connection to the irrational or imaginative realms. When unacknowledged or repressed, the anima can manifest negatively, leading to moodiness, sentimentality, effeminacy, in a derogatory sense, implying weakness, or a tendency to be overly influenced by collective opinions and emotional currents. A man whose anima is undeveloped might struggle with emotional expression, finding it difficult to articulate his feelings or connect deeply in relationships. He might be overly rational, analytical, or prone to coldness. However, when integrated, the anima enriches a man's personality, granting him emotional depth, intuition, creativity, often expressed through art, music, or spiritual pursuits, and a more profound understanding of women. He becomes capable of nuanced emotional engagement and a more balanced perspective. The animus in women. For a woman, the animus represents her capacity for thought, logic, objective judgment, and spiritual insight. An unintegrated animus can manifest as rigid, dogmatic opinions, argumentative tendencies, an inability to relate to other women, or a destructive, critical inner voice. It can make a woman feel overly aggressive or give her the impression of a fixed, unchanging truth that brooks no dissent. However, when integrated, the animus provides a woman with inner strength, initiative, clear thinking, courage, and the ability to stand up for her convictions. It allows her to articulate her thoughts effectively, providing a valuable inner authority that isn't dependent on external validation. Jung often referred to the animus's positive manifestation as a spiritual guide or inner word, providing inner clarity and purpose. The individuation process demands a conscious dialogue with these inner figures. It means recognizing the anima or animus not just as external projections onto others, but as internal components of one's own psyche. This dialogue involves several key steps: becoming aware of projections. The first step is to observe your attractions, repulsions, and emotional reactions in relationships. What qualities do you consistently admire or despise in others? These can be clues to your own unacknowledged anima or animus. Engaging with inner images. Like the shadow, the anima and animus often appear in dreams, fantasies, and active imagination. They might manifest as specific figures, e.g., a seductive woman or a demanding male figure, or as certain moods and atmospheres. Instead of dismissing them, consciously engage with these images. Ask them what they represent, what message they have for you, or what they need from you. Integrating the qualities. The goal is not to eliminate these archetypes, but to integrate their positive qualities into the conscious personality. This means a man consciously developing his emotional sensitivity and intuition, and a woman consciously cultivating her assertive critical thinking without losing her feminine essence. It's about achieving an inner balance, transcending rigid gender roles, and allowing both masculine and feminine energies to flourish within the individual. Healing relationships. By withdrawing projections and integrating the Anima Animus, relationships with actual men and women become more realistic, less burdened by idealized expectations and resentments. True connection becomes possible when we relate to others as they are, rather than as archetypal containers for our unconscious needs. Engaging with the Anima and Animus is a profound step in achieving psychic wholeness. It enriches relationships, expands emotional and intellectual capacities, and helps the individual discover a deeper sense of inner harmony. As we integrate these powerful inner partners, we move closer to unifying all the diverse aspects of our being, a process that ultimately guides us towards the central archetype of the self. Chapter 7, The Guiding Star Discovering the Self. We have journeyed from the social masks we wear, the persona, confronted the hidden aspects we fear and repress, the shadow, and engaged with the internal dynamics of our inner feminine and masculine, Anima and Animus. Each step brings us closer to a more integrated, authentic self. Now, we arrive at the culminating point of Jung's psychological map, the ultimate goal of individuation, the self. The self is arguably the most profound and central concept in Jungian psychology. It is not to be confused with the ego. While the ego is the center of conscious awareness, the self is the center of the total psyche, encompassing both consciousness and the unconscious. It is the archetype of wholeness, the unifying principle that transcends and integrates all the disparate parts of our personality. Jung often described the self as the God image within us, or the inner guiding center. Think of the self as your innate blueprint for wholeness, your unique potential to become the most complete and integrated version of yourself. It is the superordinate personality, existing from birth, striving towards its own realization. It's the inner wisdom that inherently knows what is best for your overall growth and balance. When we talk of individuation being a journey toward wholeness, it is this self that is the destination and, paradoxically, the very force guiding the journey. Symbols of the self abound across cultures and throughout history. Common symbolic representations include the mandala, a circular design with a central point, often appearing in sacred art across various traditions, Buddhist mandalas, cosmic diagrams, rose windows in cathedrals. The circle represents wholeness, eternity, enclosure, and protection, while the center symbolizes the unifying core. Jung himself drew mandalas daily as a form of active imagination and to observe his inner state, viewing them as representations of the psyche's striving for order and integration. The stone jewel lapis, often appearing as a precious, incorruptible substance, symbolizing something enduring, eternal, and perfectly formed. The child, representing new beginnings, potential, and the future. The wise old man-woman, embodying wisdom, guidance, and spiritual authority. The sun star, universal symbols of light, life, and ultimate center. These symbols are not arbitrary. They are the manifestations of the archetypal self, resonating deeply within the collective unconscious, signifying a striving towards unity and inner balance. The experience of the self is often described as a moment of profound insight, a sense of deep meaning, or a feeling of inner peace and coherence. It's not necessarily a dramatic, blinding flash, but rather a quiet knowing, a feeling that one is aligned with their true north. When the ego manages to listen to and align itself with the self, there's a sense of rightness, purpose, and inner certainty that transcends mere rational thought. But how does one discover the self if it's already an inherent part of us? It's not about creation, but about revelation. The individuation process, as we've discussed, is precisely the path of removing the obstacles, over-identified persona, unintegrated shadow, unacknowledged anima animus, that obscure our conscious connection to the self. It is through the painstaking work of integrating these other archetypes that the self can emerge more clearly into conscious awareness. The ego's relationship with the self is pivotal. Ego dominance. If the ego is too strong and rigid, it can block the messages from the self, leading to a disconnection from one's deeper purpose and a life driven solely by conscious will or external achievements. This can result in a feeling of emptiness, alienation, or an existential crisis. Inflation. Conversely, if the ego over-identifies with the self, it can lead to inflation, a kind of delusional grandiosity where the individual believes their ego is the self, leading to feelings of omnipotence or a messianic complex. This is why a strong, yet humble, ego is necessary to contain the powerful energy of the self without being overwhelmed or absorbed by it. The ego must learn to serve the self, rather than try to control it. Alignment dialogue. The ideal relationship is one of dialogue and alignment. The ego, as the conscious center, becomes the self's representative in the conscious world, enacting its directives and bringing its wisdom into lived experience. This means being open to dreams, synchronistic events, gut feelings, and intuitive promptings that emerge from the deeper layers of the psyche. The self influences the ego to pursue paths that lead to greater wholeness, often doing so through dreams, active imagination, and what Jung called meaningful coincidences or synchronicity, though the latter is a topic for a deeper dive than this book allows. It presents challenges designed to stretch the ego, pushing it towards growth and integration. These challenges are often disguised as crises, failures, or periods of intense emotional suffering, yet they serve as catalysts for profound change and can ultimately lead to a more profound understanding of who we are. Discovering and maintaining a conscious relationship with the self is an ongoing, lifelong process. It is the continuous unfolding of one's unique destiny, realizing the potential that has been present since birth. It brings a sense of meaning, purpose, and inner authority that transcends external validation. With the self as our guiding star, we gain access to an inexhaustible source of wisdom and direction, enabling us to navigate life's complexities with greater resilience and a profound sense of inner harmony. In our next chapter, we will explore the practical pathways and techniques Jung advocated for engaging with the depths of the unconscious and fostering this vital relationship with the self. Chapter 8. Pathways to the Depths: Dreams, Active Imagination, and Symbolism. Thus far, we've explored Jung's map of the psyche and introduced the major archetypes that populate our inner landscape. But how does one actually embark on this journey? How do we engage with the unconscious, understand its messages, and facilitate the individuation process? Jung provided several powerful tools and approaches for this task, primarily focusing on the language of the unconscious. Symbolism. The unconscious does not speak in logical, linear prose. Its native tongue is that of images, feelings, and metaphors. It communicates through symbols, which are not mere signs pointing to something else, but living expressions that combine multiple meanings and resonate emotionally. A symbol, for Jung, is the best possible expression for something unknown or something that cannot be fully expressed in intellectual terms. Understanding the symbolic language of the unconscious is paramount for individuation. 3 key pathways Jung illuminated for engaging with the depths are dreams, active imagination, and a deep appreciation for the symbolic life. Dreams, the royal road to the unconscious, Jungian style, while Freud famously called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. For Jung, this road led to a much broader and deeper landscape than just repressed infantile wishes. Jung viewed dreams as spontaneous, natural manifestations of the unconscious psyche, designed to compensate for one-sided conscious attitudes. They offer guidance, reveal hidden truths, and point towards paths of growth and integration. Dreams are not designed to conceal, but to communicate in their own unique symbolic language. Jungian dream analysis differs significantly from Freudian interpretation. Instead of reducing symbols to fixed meanings, e.g., all phallic symbols mean penis, Jung emphasized amplification. This involves exploring the dream image's multiple layers of meaning, personal associations. What does this image mean to me? What memories, feelings, or experiences does it evoke in my personal history? Cultural associations. How is this image understood in my culture or subculture? What common sayings, myths, or stories involve it? Universal archetypal associations. What does this image mean across different cultures and historical periods? Are there mythological parallels? For example, a snake in a dream might be personally associated with a fear of a specific childhood pet, culturally associated with temptation, and archetypally associated with primordial wisdom, healing, or transformation. The goal is not to interpret a dream to get a single, definitive answer, but to engage with its images, allowing them to amplify and reveal their complex meanings. It's a dialogue with the unconscious. Recurring dreams can indicate persistent, unaddressed issues, while big or archetypal dreams often signal a significant shift in the individuation process or the activation of powerful unconscious contents, like the self, shadow, or anima animus. Working with dreams involves recording. Keep a dream journal, writing down dreams immediately upon waking, even fragments without censoring. Highlighting key images figures. Identify the prominent characters, objects, settings, and actions. Amplification. Explore associations, personal, cultural, archetypal, for each key element. Connecting to conscious life. How might the dream relate to your current life situation, conscious attitudes, or emotional states? What compensatory message might it be trying to convey? Dialogue. Sometimes, engaging with a dream character in active imagination, see below, can further deepen understanding. Active imagination, conscious dialogue with the unconscious. This technique, developed by Jung and practiced extensively himself during his confrontation with the unconscious, which resulted in the Red Book, is a powerful method for consciously engaging with unconscious contents. It's a form of directed daydreaming or focused meditation, where one allows an image, dream fragment, or feeling to emerge from the unconscious, and then consciously interacts with it. Unlike passive daydreaming, active imagination requires a conscious, active standpoint from the ego. The steps generally involve relaxation and focus. Sit quietly and comfortably, allowing your mind to settle. Invite an image feeling. Choose a starting point, perhaps a persistent dream image, a strong emotion you've been feeling, a fantasy figure, or even a line from a poem. Hold it in your mind. Allow it to develop. Let the image or feeling develop spontaneously. Don't try to control it, simply observe what unfolds. What does the figure do? What does it say? What environment does it create? Engage and dialogue. Crucially, your conscious ego then enters the scene and interacts with the unconscious material. You speak to the figure, ask it questions, respond to its actions. It's like entering a living dream, but you are consciously present and participating. Record and reflect. After the session, record what happened in writing or drawing. Reflect on the meaning of the encounter and how it relates to your conscious life. What message did the figure convey? How does it challenge or complement your conscious attitude? Active imagination requires courage because it means willingly entering into a dialogue with sometimes unsettling or unfamiliar parts of oneself. It can be intense and emotionally charged, but it provides direct access to the wisdom and raw energy of the unconscious. It fosters a genuine relationship between the ego and the self, allowing for powerful integrations and shifts in personality. The symbolic life. Beyond specific techniques, Jung encouraged living a symbolic life. This involves cultivating an attitude of openness and reverence for the deeper meanings of everyday experiences. It means recognizing that life itself is full of symbolic significance if only we attune ourselves to it. Nature. Finding meaning in the changing seasons, the cycles of life and death, the patterns in the natural world. Art and creativity. Engaging in creative expression, painting, music, writing, dance, as a way to allow unconscious material to manifest. Engaging with the art of others. Ritual and myth. Participating in or understanding the symbolic power of personal or collective rituals and finding resonance in mythological narratives. Meaningful coincidences. Paying attention to synchronicities, those seemingly improbable but meaningfully connected events that defy causal explanation. Jung saw these as hints from the self, signs that the outer world mirrors an inner process. The path of individuation is not a dry, intellectual exercise. It is a vital, living process that demands engagement with the irrational, imaginative, and symbolic dimensions of our being. By honoring the language of the unconscious through dreams, active imagination, and a symbolic attitude, we open ourselves to profound insights, discover hidden resources, and allow the self to guide us toward our unique and rich destiny. This journey, however, involves navigating difficulties and undergoing transformations, much like an alchemical process, which we will explore next. Chapter 9: The Alchemical Journey, Transformation, and Renewal. We have now explored the primary components of Jung's psychic map and the methods for engaging with them. But what does this process of individuation actually feel like? It is not a neat, linear progression from point A to point B. Instead, Jung often likened it to the ancient art of alchemy, a mysterious and transformative process that sought to turn base metals into gold, and in its deeper, spiritual sense, to purify and perfect the soul. For Jung, the alchemical process was a powerful metaphor for psychological transformation. Just as alchemists believed that base matter had to undergo a series of precise operations, heating, dissolving, separating, combining, to yield the coveted philosopher's stone or gold, so too must the human psyche undergo a profound inner process to achieve psychological wholeness. This inner chemistry involves the melting down of old, rigid attitudes, the purification of unconscious contents, and the conscious conjunction of previously separated parts of the personality. Jung identified several key phases in the alchemical process that brilliantly parallel the stages of individuation: negrito, blackening, or putrefaction. This is the initial, often difficult, stage. It symbolizes the psychic chaos, confusion, and darkness that arise when the old, familiar structures of the ego begin to break down. It involves confronting the shadow, recognizing the limitations of the persona, and experiencing the disillusionment that comes with disidentifying from comfortable, but ultimately false, self-images. Feelings of despair, depression, anxiety, anger, and a sense of meaninglessness are common. It's a dark night of the soul, the necessary death of an old way of being before a new one can emerge. Just as gold must be melted down and purged of impurities, so too must the ego face its own base matter, albedo whitening or purification. Following the initial chaos and disintegration, this phase brings purification, illumination, and differentiation. It's a period where insights begin to emerge from the unconscious. The dust settles, and what was confused begins to make sense. This is where one begins to understand their complexes, recognize projections, and discriminate between different psychic contents. The energy freed from the blackening can now be used for fresh perspectives and new possibilities. From the chaos of the negrito, a new clarity emerges, leading to a more objective understanding of oneself and the unconscious. Rubido, reddening, or conjunction. This is often considered the final, culminating stage, the union of opposites. Having confronted the darkness, negrid, and achieved a degree of clarity, albedo, the individual can now consciously and harmoniously unite previously opposing aspects of the psyche: consciousness and unconsciousness, masculine and feminine, light and dark. This is the stage where true psychic integration occurs, leading to the emergence of the self as the unifying center. It symbolizes the creation of the lapis philosophicum, philosopher's stone, a stable, integrated, and whole personality, capable of living authentically and responding flexibly to life's challenges and resistances on the path. While the alchemical metaphor paints a vivid picture, it's essential to acknowledge that the individuation journey is fraught with challenges and resistances. It is a path for the courageous, not the faint of heart. Neurosis as a call to growth. Jung believed that neuroses, psychological symptoms like anxiety, depression, or obsessions, are not merely illnesses to be cured, but are often signals from the unconscious. They are the psyche's way of prompting the ego to pay attention, to integrate what has been neglected, and to move towards individuation. A neurosis is often a sign that the soul is suffering from a lack of meaning or a rigid, one-sided conscious attitude that prevents holistic development. Psychic inflation. This is a significant danger on the individuation path. It occurs when the ego identifies too closely with the powerful, universal energies of the collective unconscious or an archetype. Instead of integrating these energies, the ego becomes grandiose, believing itself to be a manifestation of the archetype. For instance, someone might encounter the hero archetype in their dreams and then develop a messiah complex, believing they are destined to save the world. Inflation can lead to arrogance, a loss of humility, and a disconnection from one's ordinary human limitations, often ending in a dramatic fall or psychological crisis. Feeling overwhelmed and fear. Confronting the raw, untamed forces of the unconscious can be terrifying. The archetypes are powerful, primordial, and often irrational. Facing one's shadow, engaging with the anima animus, or experiencing the numinous power of the self can shake the ego's foundations, leading to fear, confusion, and a desire to retreat to the familiar. Resistance from the ego. The ego, naturally, prefers stability and control. The individuation process demands change, surrendering control, and venturing into the unknown. The ego will therefore naturally resist, clinging to old patterns, defenses, and comfortable illusions. This resistance can manifest as procrastination, rationalization, intellectualizing the process without actually feeling it, or simply giving up when the work becomes too challenging. The ongoing nature of the journey. It is vital to understand that individuation is not a destination one reaches and then stops. It is a lifelong, ongoing process. Life constantly presents new situations, new challenges, and new opportunities for growth and integration. The psyche is dynamic, and the relationship between consciousness and the unconscious is ever-evolving. An individuated person is not someone who is perfect or free from neuroses, but rather someone who has developed a conscious working relationship with their unconscious, who is open to its messages, and who continues to strive for greater wholeness and authenticity. It is an asymptotic process, meaning one continually approaches wholeness but never fully arrives. The profound impact of this journey on one's life is manifold. While challenging, it leads to a deeper sense of meaning and purpose, unique to each individual. It fosters resilience in the face of life's inevitable difficulties, as one gains an inner axis that is not solely dependent on external circumstances. It cultivates greater compassion for oneself and others, as one understands the universal struggles inherent in the human condition. And ultimately, an individuated person, by becoming truly themselves, paradoxically becomes more deeply connected to humanity, able to contribute their unique gifts to the collective in a way that is authentic and meaningful. In our final chapter, we will wrap up by exploring what it means to live this wholeness in everyday life. Chapter 10. Living Wholeness Individuation in Everyday Life. We have journeyed through the intricate landscapes of Jung's psyche, explored its archetypal inhabitants, discovered how to dialogue with the unconscious, and understood the transformative nature of the individuation process. Now, the crucial question remains: what does it all mean for our daily lives? How does one live an individuated life in the messy, demanding, and often unpsychological reality of the 21st century? Individuation is not about escaping the world or retreating into an ivory tower of self-contemplation. On the contrary, it is about engaging more fully and authentically with life. It is the process of becoming more fully human, not less. An individuated person is not aloof or spiritually enlightened in a detached sense. Rather, they are grounded, resilient, and deeply connected to their inner wisdom while actively participating in the world around them. So, what are the practical implications and benefits of embarking on and continuing the individuation journey? 1. Enhanced self-awareness and authenticity. The most immediate benefit is a profound increase in self-awareness. By understanding your persona, acknowledging your shadow, and integrating your anima or animus, you gain a clearer picture of who you truly are, beyond the roles you play or the defenses you've built. This leads to greater authenticity, a congruence between your inner experience and your outer expression. You become less susceptible to external pressures, less driven by unconscious reactions, and more able to make conscious choices that align with your deepest values. This doesn't mean always being pleasant. Authenticity often means embracing discomfort or conflict when necessary. 2. Improved relationships. As individuation progresses, your relationships with others fundamentally shift. By integrating your own shadow, you become less prone to projecting your unacknowledged flaws onto others, leading to less blame and resentment. By understanding the anima animus, you develop a more mature and realistic understanding of intimate partners, family, and colleagues, moving beyond idealized projections. You learn to differentiate between Jung's dictum, "I relate to you from my ego, but I relate to the self in you from myself." This deepens empathy, fosters healthier boundaries, and allows for more genuine connection. 3. Discovering meaning and purpose. One of the most profound outcomes of individuation is the discovery of a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in life. Jung believed that the human psyche inherently strives for wholeness and meaning. When the ego aligns with the self, it taps into this inner source of direction. This often manifests not as a grand, singular mission, but as a felt sense of being on the right path, of contributing in a way that feels personally resonant and deeply fulfilling. Life's challenges become less about external failures and more about opportunities for psychological growth and deeper understanding. 4. Increased resilience and psychological well-being. The process of confronting one's shadow and integrating disowned parts of the personality builds immense inner strength and resilience. When difficult emotions arise, an individuated person is better equipped to acknowledge, process, and contain them rather than being overwhelmed. They understand that suffering can be a catalyst for growth, and that even in darkness, there is potential for renewal. This leads to a more stable psychological foundation, reducing anxiety, depression, and other neurotic symptoms that often arise from psychic fragmentation. 5. Enhanced creativity and problem-solving. By fostering a conscious relationship with the unconscious, the individuated person gains access to a rich reservoir of intuition, imagination, and creative energy. The unconscious is a source of novel ideas and solutions that rational thought alone cannot generate. This can manifest in artistic expression, innovative problem-solving in one's profession, or simply a more flexible and imaginative approach to daily life. 6. Ethical action and contribution to society. Jung believed that individuation is not a selfish endeavor. A person who is becoming more whole and integrated naturally contributes more positively to the collective. By integrating their own shadow, they are less likely to project their darkness onto external groups or scapegoats, fostering greater tolerance and understanding. By finding their unique path and expressing their authentic self, they bring new ideas, perspectives, and energies into the world, enriching the collective consciousness. The more people who embark on this journey, the more psychologically sound and compassionate society becomes. Sustaining the individuation journey. As emphasized earlier, individuation is not a destination, but a continuous unfolding. Here are practical ways to sustain this vital journey. Maintain a relationship with your unconscious. Continue to engage with your dreams, practice active imagination when appropriate, and pay attention to synchronicities and irrational feelings. The unconscious is your constant ally and guide. Embrace paradox and ambiguity. Life is full of contradictions. The individuated person learns to hold tension between opposites light and dark, good and bad, spirit and matter, without needing to reduce them. Cultivate self-reflection and mindfulness. Regularly check in with yourself. How are you feeling? What are your motivations? Are you acting from your authentic self or from a persona or an unintegrated complex? Seek meaning beyond materialism. While practicalities are important, consciously seek activities, relationships, and thoughts that provide a deeper sense of meaning and purpose, rather than just chasing external achievements. Engage in symbolic life. Find personal meaning in rituals, nature, art, and mythology. This keeps you connected to the larger patterns of existence and the depths of the collective unconscious. Practice humility. Remember that the ego is not the self. The journey is one of service to a greater whole within you, not an egoic conquest. There will always be more to discover, more to integrate. Ultimately, living wholeness means living a life of increasing consciousness, authenticity, and meaning. It is a hero's journey, not external battles, but an inner quest for the treasure of the self. By embarking on this path, you not only transform your own life, but also illuminate a path for others, contributing to the ongoing evolution of human consciousness. The journey is challenging, but the reward, becoming your truest, most complete self, is the greatest adventure of all.